ministerial?
No. Shall I explain, or do you want to continue?
It's fine, thank you.
I did put in for a request to be reimbursed, and it was denied.
Did you, were you concerned about any favoritism in terms of contracts that were made between the county and other parties that appeared to be friends of the administrator who received special attention?
Certainly in the case of Mr. Wilson's daughter.
Miss Allison, Miss Shawn?
Correct.
Anyone else? Any consulting contracts? Or?
Well, some of what we learned was after the fact. I think, I'm not sure, has the Daniel report been entered into evidence for this trial?
Let's go back to November of 2008 and prior. Were there any other consulting contracts?
Yes.
Contracts of that nature about which you were concerned?
There was CNS Consulting,
and he was
minority business that appeared to have no education or work experience in mass transit. Of course, Mr. Wilson's daughter, who had no background in farming or ag ed. We had Clemson University, Clemson Extension Service right here. The head of sustainable agriculture, who was very involved locally. That was low cost or no cost at all to the county. No need on that one.
Who was the, you mentioned CNS Consulting. Who was who ran that company?
Relevance. What paragraph in the amended complaint references CNS?
Who is CNS?
CNS, the principal is Mr. John Scott, and Ms. Wilson will testify that he was a friend of Mr. Preston's, and he received a consulting contract that was favorable in her mind and others. It was a concern.
Is there an allegation in the complaint about that? I don't recall CNS ever being mentioned in this case until just now.
And we don't into that one.
Then why is it relevant?
It is an example of some of the concerns that Ms. Wilson had with regards to the administrator. And I'm near the end of the list now, in case.
It's just prejudicial. I mean, you got off on all these rants.
I will end up being the finder of fact in this, and I'll decide what I give credence to and what I don't give credence to once I've heard all the evidence and start the process. So I'm going to allow her to bring it in. Let's try to confine ourselves to the issues. I've never heard of that entity before until right now. I'm trying to listen to everything.
Yes,
I haven't heard that yet. Go ahead.
Ms. Wilson, in finishing up your list of concerns about the administrator, was there an issue of, how did you feel about the tone at the top, or the example that he set for others, or his conduct? Was that a concern to you and other members of council?
Well, his personal attitude and demeanor toward me was certainly less than polite and professional, but the fact that there were rumors swirling around about affairs and misuse of credit cards for wining and dining downtown, all of those things were a very great concern. And we had allegations of county employees with sexual harassment issues going on too, and that was a concern to me as well.
All right. Relevant. I mean, first of all, I'd like to move to strike that in the record. It has nothing to do with this case. Second of all, I mean, at some point, this case is going to have to be about the severance agreement. We've had one day of testimony about the severance agreement, and then we're on day number 4, 3 consecutive days about other stuff. And it's becoming days of our lives.
Well, the question of the political environment in the county has been brought in by your side, Mr. Davis. And that is relevant simply to the fact that there's an issue in the case as to whether or not the actions by council was arbitrary and This is not a trial, as far as I know, about the performance of the administrator in his job before that occurred, although except to the extent that it affected the atmosphere and the environment in which the decision was made. It's becoming apparent to me that it was a strained environment. I think every witness has confirmed that. Let's try to get down to the points and move on. I understand that there are certain points you'd like to make, and I'm going to let you do it. And so let's move on. Thank you.
Yes, Your Honor.
Let's just try to get through this. We estimated a week-long trial, and now I've set aside another week. So I'm here to get it done. We've got plenty of time, so you may proceed.
Ms. Wilson, you testified about some sexual harassment that had occurred within the county. Was there any, did the administrator discipline employees that were engaging in inappropriate behavior?
Didn't appear to. There was a sexual harassment suit between the result of two county employees having an inappropriate affair. They admitted it. They both probably should have been fired. One was demoted, one was promoted. That was fairly soon. Then during the time, I think around 05, 06, there were anonymous letters that came to me and apparently to other council members that indicated, it seemed to be the product of an employee over in the communications center decrying and deploring, begging us to look into allegations of sexual harassment for one of the bosses over there and other issues that seemed to be unprofessional. And that's one area when a county citizen calls 911, they expect prompt professional attention, and we were getting complaints and then having those letters from someone anonymously, but it seemed to be the product of an employee. I did ask if we could make an inquiry and an investigation, but that was turned over to an attorney, and that was the end of that. And then we heard later that the boss in question resigned and that there was a sexual harassment settlement paid out for him. Those type things are very concerning. I mean, it seemed to be like a pagan place.
Did you have any concerns about the administrator's own conduct?
Certainly, if he's setting, for example, that leaves the door open for other employees to emulate.
What specifically were you concerned about his conduct?
I did write our former chairman and vice chairman about my concerns of rumors alleging an affair with the former administrator and a subordinate female. And I asked what the potential liabilities would be if they proved true.
Talking about a letter that you wrote about rumors.
If you're going to get into these kinds of allegations, you have to lay some foundation as to how she came about the knowledge, so
Yes, Your Honor.
determine whether or not what she's testifying to is admissible evidence or not.
Your Honor.
And I don't know how we do that unless I get you to start asking specific questions about specific events.
Yes, Your Honor.
And I'm going to ask that you do that.
Yes, Your
I
Honor.
don't know how else I can control the situation.
This is the specific topic that we're on now. I believe you indicated that you had not heard testimony on this specific issue and that it was relevant for your consideration of other evidence and whether or not to.
The only reason I've heard anything about what was alleged that Cater Lake and or this particular employee is whether or not it has to do with impeachment, whether or not that impeachment is on a collateral matter or not. And I put it on the challenged evidence list because I have questions about its relevance to the case and or whether or not it can be properly used for impeachment purposes. It is on the edge. That's what I see. It remains on the edge. Now, if this witness is going to testify, though, about certain allegations and things that she would like to testify about, there's got to be some basis by which I can measure whether or not her testimony is admissible or not on that subject. And if she's allowed simply to, that's the problem that this attorney's having, is that specific questions aren't being asked and specific answers are not being given, it does not afford him an opportunity to object to evidence that's being introduced and for me to make a ruling on it. So I'm going to ask you to ask specific questions about specific events from this point forward. I don't know how else we're going to manage this situation. We're going to spend the whole time with us arguing these points out. And I'm not going to let this hearing degenerate into that.
That's right.
Thank you. Specific questions on specific points. Thank you.
Ms. Wilson, did the administrator have a duty of honesty to the council?
I would certainly assume so.
Were you present at a meeting in which the administrator gave a report to council about incidents that occurred at Caters Lake, and the meeting at which also Boucher and Crenshaw gave reports? It was in March of 2006. Do you recall the meeting that
I do.
Okay. Do you believe do you recall what Mr. Preston stated to you at that meeting, to the council at that meeting?
It seems like
You don't have to tell me what it is, but do you recall what he said?
the main emphasis I recall was in vulgar and salacious letters, and that he
And
was.
the question was, were you present and did you hear it? Respond to the
Okay.
question and then I'm going to let her ask another question.
Were you present at the meeting in which Deputy Chief Boucher gave a report, and after which Mr. Preston spoke, and I believe it was from prepared remarks, and he spoke to council about the incident that had been reported in the media at Caters Lake and a purported sting operation? Do you remember him giving that report to you and the other members of council?
Yes.
Do you believe that he was telling the truth to council in his report?
I don't know, but I do know that the so-called vulgar and salacious letters were intended to be, and I kept hearing they were trying to make it out that I had something to do with them, and that was very disturbing.
Ms. Wilson, do you have any independent, any firsthand knowledge that led you to be concerned over whether or not the administrator was having an extramarital affair with a subordinate employee?
There was a lot of rumor, gossip. It seemed to be open and notorious downtown, people noticing.
On November 18th, 2008, during the council meeting, you were given a copy of Mr. Preston's severance agreement. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Had you seen it before that moment that it was handed out?
No.
Did you read it?
I didn't have time.
Did you know that the agreement had a provision releasing you from claims by Mr. Preston?
It may have been mentioned, but I was struggling trying to figure out how much it was going to cost. I was looking at the numbers.
At the time that you voted against the severance agreement, did you know that there was a provision in the agreement releasing you and other members of council from any claims that Mr. Preston may have made?
No.
No further questions.
Your witness, counsel.
Your Honor, at this time, we'd like to keep the witness under subpoena and reserve the right to recall during our case.
Any objection?
No objection.
Okay, ma'am, you may step down at this time. I'm going to caution you, ma'am, as I have every witness, I have issued a sequestration order in this case. It requires that witnesses cannot, or orders that witnesses cannot discuss their testimony with anyone until such time as the case has ended. So you remain under that sequestration order. You cannot discuss your testimony with anyone until such time as the case is ended. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
Also, I will inform you that you are still under subpoena in this case and are subject to recall. You understand that as well?
One question, does that mean I should be here every day, ready to be called, or would someone just simply let me know, maybe not?
How do you want to handle that?
Ms. Wilson, that is an absolutely fair request, and I will do that. What I propose to do is communicate it through the attorneys for the county and let them communicate to you when, and I will give you the best approximation I can as to when I will be calling.
Thank you, ma'am. You can step down at this time. County may call us next week.
Your Honor, this time the county has concluded presentation of evidence on its case in chief, subject only to, we just want to confirm that the right exhibits are in with the clerk. I think they all are. I just want to make sure that physical copies are.
Some of the pre-admitted are not.
Oh, okay. Some of the pre-admitted exhibits have not yet been placed up there. That's all we need to do. We rest our case.
All right. Anything you'd like to take up with me at this point?
Yes, Your Honor, I was actually going to request maybe a short break in order to make sure that my remarks are preserved for the record in an appropriate way.
I understand, okay. We will take about a 5 to 4 minute break. I'll return at that time. Court's in recess.